Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Wack. Today is April 3rd, and today's episode is going to cover the changes that have been brought in place because of RPIP 30. We're going to be talking about new RPIP being written to form a security council, and we're going to be giving a summary of yesterday's community call. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, we're going to start here with this post from Langers. So overnight, he posted, hey everyone, as per RPIP 30, the RPL withdrawal limit has been reduced to 100% of a node's bonded ETH. Please let us know if there are any issues. Thanks, Rocket Pool. So let's talk a little bit about how bonding works, and then I can explain what's happened here. So previously, you needed to put forward 8 ETH and a minimum of 10% of the borrowed ETH from the protocol as collateral for RPL. So that was 8 ETH plus 2.4 ETH of RPL. However, the maximum amount of RPL that you could put and still get rewards was 150% of node operator ETH. So it was 1.5 times 8, so it was up to 12 ETH. So you would get rewards from 2.4 ETH of RPL all the way up to 12 ETH of RPL. With RPIP 30, the changes were made to the rewards curve, which meant that people who were staking on the lower end would get outsized rewards. And the reasons for that were that people who needed to top up would be more encouraged to top up now than they were before. Also, it would strongly encourage people who are still running 16 ETH validators to migrate to 8 ETH validators because the curves were more friendly at those levels. And finally, it would potentially bring more node operators online or bring more validators online because people would want to get those extra rewards for RPL. Now, that is a 6-month phase-in period, and we're now at the stage where people can start withdrawing their RPL. So let me tell you what kind of RPL they can actually withdraw. So from 12 ETH, which was the limit before, if you had collateral on your node all the way up to 12 ETH worth of RPL, you couldn't remove that without exiting your node first. You could only remove amounts above that. So if the ratio went up from the time that you started staking, I know that sounds funny right now, but if the ratio went up, and you had like a 20 ETH worth of RPL instead of 12 ETH worth of RPL, you would be able to remove that top 8 ETH of RPL. However, now with this change, you'll be able to remove all the way down to 8 ETH of RPL. So you'll be able to remove 12 ETH of RPL instead of just that 8 that I was mentioning a second ago. The changes this would have would basically mean that people will hopefully start staking more ETH validators and trying to get those rewards for the higher RPL rewards at the lower collateral levels. In 2 months' time, there's going to be another change where you'll be able to remove the RPL down to, I think, 60% of bonded ETH. So it'll be even less. I think that's where it goes down to. Yeah, but that change came in yesterday, so people have been kind of discussing it and talking about it. But here you could see it come through on Rocket Watch gave the notification saying ODA bootstrap mode settings modified, settings node per minipool stake maximum set to 100%. So that's what happened overnight, which is pretty cool. So that was good to see. However, Shifrin here noticed that there was some breaks happening with the amount that changed. So he said, did Grafana break with 1.12.1 or with the withdrawal limit being reduced? Seems like it's borking my APR too. So here, you can see how much RPL Shifrin has on his validator, but then you can also see that the amounts that he's getting don't look right. So that kind of put up a discussion in the community about how it's all coming together and talking about what the reward is going to be like and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can go and follow that discussion. Okay, next we've got this update that's coming in with Houston, which is going to be the Security Council, and the community started working together to come up with a charter for the Security Council. And there's this thread here where the ideas for that are being shared. Now, you might not know what the Security Council is, so let me take a minute to tell you about that. So with Houston, one of the big things that is happening, in fact, the biggest thing that potentially that's happening is on-chain voting will be introduced to the Rocket Pool community. That means that when you do a vote, the results of that vote will make a change to the Rocket Pool contract, and that is mostly related to some of the tweaking that can be done to things like the rewards levels, like we were just talking about with the RPIP 30, and some other things like that as well. Like there's certain tweakable components of the Guardian, the Rocket Pool Guardian that we have, and currently that's controlled by the team. But the idea is that that control of that will then go to the Security Council. So the Security Council will be able to see if there's a vote that's coming through the protocol. If it's going to do something bad, the Security Council will be able to shut that down. We'll be able to pause the contracts that they need to. So, of course, we need a Security Council charter. We will also need to find people to join the Security Council. So that's what is starting here now with this discussion. So Non-Fungible Yoakum says, as I've been summarily trying to address this, the Security Council membership is a serious role, and the PDAO should develop strong entry requirements and processes for routinely flushing stale members. The development of these requirements and processes left for future RPIP. I've written up some very preliminary notes on what a Security Council charter might include to achieve the above. Much of this is very well, maybe poorly thought out, and need of swift editing, removal, replacement before the bad ideas get out of hand. So he started asking for feedback. So you started to see the usual people like Epinef, Noshua, and Val, of course. So the usual suspects started to get involved with providing feedback with this and trying to think of the different things that will need to be included in the charter. And of course, Val was involved in writing the ODAO and PDAO charters also. So we've got some of the best brains in the community working on what the Security Council should look like, and then eventually trying to figure out what kind of attributes we want in the members of the Security Council. Okay, as you remembered from yesterday's episode, we had our Rocket Pool community call, and this one was featuring NodeSet. So this one's actually really interesting because a whole lot of people turned up to hear what NodeSet have to talk about, and it really helps that Nick and Wander, part of our community. They're from the Rocket Pool community, and they really want Rocket Pool to succeed. So these notes were provided by Sneaky Ninja Guy, who did the absolute most amazing job I've ever seen in someone getting information to me. Like, I'm just like in awe of the work that he put into this. So the call started with a brief introductory overview of what NodeSet is. So Nick and Wanda from the Rocket Pool community met in HODLCon in Hawaii, which is a meeting set up through ETH Finance on Reddit. And they met, and that's when they started talking about what it might look like. And the goal was to figure out how to help Rocket Pool scale, how to empower small and independent node operators. And the main focus is on building Constellation, and that's their scaling solution that's built on top of Rocket Pool. So then they talked about what Constellation is and how they want to bring lots of Rocket Pool node operators online into their system. They have light, simple resistance process, so there's no personally identifiable information. It's just a means to ensure that you're a real person who can run a node, and you are not pretending to be multiple people, which is what I was joking with them that I would do. I'd like shave my beard and like put on a different accent and try to become a member of the second validator. But anyway, they said that they have an egalitarian focus. They're not trying to be like Lido. They were going to try to give node operators, get as many node operators on board as possible, provided they meet their criteria. And then they're going to have public audits. They're going to make their code public after the audits, which happen after Houston. And they've currently received 350 applications, of which 200 interviews have been conducted. And I think they've already got more than like 150 or close to 200 node operators like signed up to join them. So if you want to join, you can go to nodeset.io/join to apply. So then there was talking about the role of the roles in the system of Constellation. So they talked about depositors and what they can get back and how it all works. And then they talked about the node operators and how they'll have to pay gas out of pocket, but they'll be getting a share of the rewards that are coming in. And there was some more information about that, about how like basically they'll be paid ETH for each of the validators they run. and then the administrator as well. So the administrator doesn't actually touch any assets, makes sure the protocol runs as expected, sets the parameters, whitelists addresses, ejects operators, has the ability to propose upgrades, and the upgrades are not unilateral, and the team is continuing to explore ways to add further safeguards. Upgradability cannot be removed because Rocket Pool is not ossified, and the admin gets a cut of the fees from the system. So until EIP 7002, the admin will also hold pre-signed exit messages from the validators on all the nodes. So that is important as well. And then there was some community questions about NodeSet. So one of them was like, how will the distribution of validators go? Will it just be round robin for the node operators? So they said it won't be round robin. What it'll do is that they'll set the parameters to 1, and all the node operators will be able to get 1 validator. And then eventually they'll set it to 2, and then to 3. And each time they raise that limit, node operators will be able to spin up new validators based on that. And then they'll get the ETH that they need from that to happen. And that's how they explained it. And then they asked for are there any plans for infrastructure, for example, a separate instance of the rescue node. And they currently have no plans, as the team is focused on getting Constellation ready. However, the team is aware that node operators in the system need to be supported, and they'll be exploring ways to facilitate that. So they mentioned having really good docs, having things like the rescue node, etc. Eventually working within NodeSet as well. Then they were asked, are there any misconceptions of NodeSet beyond the role of the administrator? And they said, yes, there are lots of misconceptions around NodeSet just being a permission layer like Lido on top of Rocket Pool. The admin role does not have total control of the protocol, and NodeSet has gone through a lot of effort to ensure that this is the case. The path to ossification and maximization of automation is NodeSet's goal. They said, what are your thoughts about the unbalanced deposit situation where you don't have enough of one of the assets? Do you wait for equilibrium? And they said that revenue can be directed towards liquidity pools, or direct incentives can be offered as a way of mitigating that. Then they said, are there any plans to incorporate forced exits? And then yes, they need forced exits to make their protocol better. And then they said, what are your hopes to the first week? So they said Constellation is put out there. All the node operators create a node, extract the contract immediately, ideally in low gas environment, and then immediately get a bunch of XRETH and XRPL deposits to get the system over the initial hump. And said there's expected to be a bit of bootstrapping period that involves getting assets distributed for everyone to create validators, as well as keep a portion aside for liquidity purposes and to prevent depegging. And said as much participation as possible, ideally thousands of ETH deposits, as well as having 300 to 400 node operators at launch. The wildest hopes and dreams would be that on day 1, Constellation would drain the Rocket Pool deposit pool, which would be 18,000 ETH of rETH, which would be a third of that, which is 6,000 ETH would be deposited into NodeSet to build up those validators. So they said, any thoughts on limits of number of validators to put on the consumer piece of hardware? So they said that there's no stress testing done yet, but not expecting to be much different than Rocket Pool. And they recommend getting input from Marceau and Thomas, who have to deal with that. And I can speak about Marceau. So he used a Rock5B board towards the end of his time when he was staking, and he was running, I think, 185 validators on a Rock5B board. So I don't think there's going to be any limitations really that you'll face from a consumer hardware. If you've got a NUC, then you can run up to 1,000 plus validators on the NUC. And I think NodeSet would have to get really, really successful for you to run 1,000 validators. So that would be good for everyone. And it says, have you thought about the incentives to facilitate client diversity? So they're talking about normally, the people who they've gotten, they understand the problems, and NodeSpace will pay attention to it, but they'll do what they can to help with it. But most of the people who they've got as node operators already understand the issues, and hopefully will keep that diversity going. They said, have you guys had any thoughts about rainbow staking? Generally speaking, NodeSet wants to provide whatever NodeSet can provide. If there's an opportunity for node operator to provide some kind of service, NodeSet will evaluate the potential for that. NodeSet is looking to potentially classify people to hyperdrive their clients, strutting people into various levels of hardware capabilities and presenting opportunities in alignment with those capabilities. And then they said, what does Constellation launch timeline looks like today? So they're saying that basically they're in the alpha stage right now, and they're going to get audited once Houston goes live, which will be in about 4.5 weeks time, 5 weeks time. And then they were saying that what they want is after the audits, then they'll have public testnet, and they'll go from there. So the idea is a July launch, but personally, I think it might go into either the very end of July or sometime in August is more likely. Maybe even as far out as September in unlikely case, but possibly. And then they said regarding the tokenomics, okay, so this was in response to like the tokenomics suggestions and their paper that they wrote, and it says they want everyone to read the tokenomics responses, and if they're only going to read the part of it, you read this risk analysis and number of potentially large risks in the current proposals as written, and that's the stuff that we covered here a couple of weeks ago, talking about like centralization, etc. And said notes have suggested some ways to mitigate those risks, and then anything for the Rocket Pool community. So here, their interesting point when the community has the opportunity to make some decisions about long-term impact that they're going to have on the choices that are made now. This is from NodeSet's perspective. Rocket Pool focus on security, safety, creates an ecosystem that allows for lots of building on the protocol. NodeSet implores the community to think about how we can get as many builders to build on Rocket Pool as possible. And then how do you get in touch with NodeSet? So go to their website, nodeset.io. There's email information there. You can join their Discord, etc. as well. So that part of the community call finished, and then it was Langers's turn to answer some questions from the community. And the first one of these was about Starknet. So Langers said that the effort in terms of the airdrop, that they provided information to Starknet about Rocket Pool node operators, their withdrawal addresses, and now it's all up to Starknet to deal with it. They found some small anomalies, especially around solo staker migration, but that's been kind of ironed out on the NodeSet side. Sorry, not NodeSet side, on the Starknet side. And he says gone over really well, and it's up to them to plug it into their provision system. And they don't know when that will be rolled out. But if Langers can get a date from the Starknet team, he'll be sharing that with the community soon. I think one of the other staking services is actually rolling out their rewards for Starknet today or tomorrow. So hopefully Rocket Pool won't be too far behind. Hopefully within the next week we should get access to our rewards as well. With Houston, Langers is feeling good. Testing has gone really well. They've done pretty much the last of the testing. The team is having a go no go meeting, I guess today, about when they're going to put out the testnet. So it's either going to come out like this week or next week. But I think Langers was kind of hinting more towards that it might be next week. Said a lot of the user interface stuff is done, save for a small bit of testing, and we're going to see if they can get that done. But at the moment, the target is still the May 6th launch date. In audits, they found a bug last week. They're just getting the final fix check on that, and audits won't be released until next week, and then can switch over to Immunify to the Houston code. There'll be a Medium article overview that points to the documentation for further information. And then they've talked about the tokenomics, because they said that they were going to start workshopping it internally and kind of discussing things. So Langer said that the team sat down with Val and Samus last week to have a chat about the different proposals. They provided feedback to them, So I think they were given feedback from Val and Samus, or maybe the other way around, I'm not sure exactly. And it was more an education thing to make sure that everyone across the team understood how the proposal worked and to provide an opportunity to ask questions. So they're going to have another workshop next week around different aspects of the proposals and break them into an understanding of what would be needed to be done to deliver those things. Also an opportunity to raise more questions. And then Kane is going to spend more time with megapools and work on the productization of the megapools. And I think Langers was insinuating that there's like a 6-week timeline basically for him to have that done, which is really excited. And then they finished up by talking about the reward threshold being decreased, which what we already talked about on the episode. So that was truly phenomenal contribution from Sneaky. He kind of laughed it off, saying that it was the first time in a while that he could listen to the call without having his wife and kids around, and because of that he was able to do this. But seriously, this is just phenomenal. Like, Sneaky's my number one submitter, as you all know, but this is going way above and beyond like the work that he's done so far. So huge shout out goes to Sneaky for this work. And of course, if you want to listen to the call, after all that summary, there's no need for you to listen to the call. It covered everything you needed. But if you want to listen to the call, you can then you can still go ahead and listen to the call. It's on YouTube already, so you can go get that. Okay, next we're going to the forum here. So on yesterday's episode, I talked about how in 1.12.1 there's notification channels now that you can set up, and they're still being worked on. So here Patches says, thanks to the diligent work of Active Squat, a SmartNode 1.12 added the alerts notifications feature, but this only currently supports Discord notifications. Excuse me. This is under the hood. We use Alert Manager, which supports many more channels. Please vote for the ones that you're most likely to use in the poll so we can prioritize the order in which we add and test them. So 91% of participants said email, 29% said Telegram, then webhooks, pushover, PagerDuty, but no one said AWS, SNS, or Microsoft Teams, or all these other ones as well. It'd be nice if they had WhatsApp, but I guess Telegram kind of like does the same job. But almost everyone wants email notifications, and most people also want, well, a lot of people also want Telegram and webhooks. So Patches goes on to say, additionally, how important is it that you're able to route specific alerts to one or more channels, like uptime alerts to PagerDuty, proposal, notifications to email, critical load disk space to PagerDuty and email, etc. And people said they'll read the neutral. The majority of people, some people said, sounds too complex to even consider. A very small number of people said that it was important for them. And then there was some feedback that was starting to be given, and you can get the information here on SmartNode Rocket Pool service config, and then you can go to alerting, which is on the add-ons, and you can find all these different things that you can have alerted. And then you can basically set up your own Discord server, and you'll get the notifications coming to your Discord server. I think very soon you'll be getting it to your email as well, because most people seem to want it in their email. Right, talking about patches, we're coming onto the rescue node now, and here Shifrin had a post saying the Rocket Pool Grants Committee just extended funding to the public goods project Rocket Rescue Node, expanding its service to solo stakers. This initiative underscores the DAO's commitment to aligning with decentralized values and the solo staking community. So Rocket Rescue Node was given $9,600, and now it has a tag on their website saying generously sponsored by the Rocket Pool Grants Management Committee. And then Shifrin goes on to say the Rocket Rescue Node is a community-operated Ethereum node which can be used by node operators as an emergency fallback node during maintenance. And then credit shout went to Patches, Dean McCartney, Hani Abu Kopash, who worked on the project. And then there's the website link to the website, but we've talked about the Rocket Rescue Node on Rocket Fuel a whole lot. I think you're all kind of familiar with it by now. Okay, next we are getting close to a vote for RPIP 39, and this is the bounty incentives vote. So Long for Wisdom here has some text that basically is going to be put forward to the community. So this RPIP 39 bounty incentives. RPIP 39 proposes to allow the Grants Management Committee to pay out incentives to community members engaging with the bounty system. And then there's like some rationale about that. Here Val had a small correction, and zkSJP had a couple of questions as well, but it looks like this is going to vote very soon, and I'll dig into it a little bit more once it's actually on the voting page. Right, next we have some information about Vrun, which is Ramana's new staking service, and this will be basically a competitor to all nodes. So here Ramana says, hey, by the way, who's interested in trying out Vrun? I think it's going to be live on Haleshki soon. So in this says, what's a Vrun? And then Pectra had the links to the Git repo and a front end for it. And in this said, there's nothing here that has a description of what it is. And then there was a discussion about what Vrun is. So basically, Vrun will be a place where you can bring your ETH and RPL and pay a small fee, and then they will run that on your behalf as a server. And basically, it's an all-node competitor within the Rocket community. There is a bounty for this from the GMC, and it's Ramana and LFO looking for owls who worked on one branch of it, and then there's a second branch of it who the work for that was done by, I'm not sure who that is. It's slipping my mind right now. I forgot. I'm sorry. But there's two different versions of this being worked on right now. But it looks like the group from Ramana is getting closer to getting to the finish line, and that's really exciting because the Rocket Pool community can then start using Vrun instead of using all nodes, which a big chunk of the community is still on all nodes, right? I think it's like 10 or 20% of Rocket Pool validators are running on all nodes. This is what the website looks like. It says, Vrun, connect your wallet. Welcome to Vrun. Embrace true ownership with Vrun, non-custodial Ethereum staking for forward-thinking node operators. And if you press create a validator, nothing happens at the moment because they're still testing. Oh yeah, you can, I guess, connect your wallet, but they're going to be on Aleshki soon. So once they're on there, maybe I'll give them a bit more of a talking about. And if you want to see what their software is looking like, you can look on their GitHub, which is in the description below as well. Okay, next we've got news of a new DeFi project on zkEVM, which is the Polygon ZK network. And here is from Gyroscope, and they're saying a new rETH wrapped ETH ECLP on zkEVM is live with incentives from Polygon and Rocket Pool and Spin. The last version boosted capital efficiency by over 110% in practice. The new pool keeps the same capital efficiency while upgrading to Chainlink's new zkEVM rate providers. So the Gyroscope go on and say rETH can trade significantly above peg due to RPL bonding design. This makes stable swap amplification unsuitable and means that most rETH liquidity tends to be at unused prices. This asymmetric ECLP is a unique edge for rETH by more than doubling liquidity where it's needed. And then they give a bit more explanation of what they're doing. So this is cool. If you want to provide liquidity for them, it looks like they've got some really good rewards. So you can tap into that and start earning. Okay, next moving on to some other news now. Here, the first of this is news about Lido, I guess, and staking as a general. So Bitcoin.com had an article saying in 22 days, liquid staking platforms witness a 340,000 ETH decline. So of course, you know, there's millions of ETH staked, so as a percentage it's not that much, even though it sounds like a lot. They say according to most recent data within the last 22 days, the volume of staked Ether locked across various liquid staking derivative token platforms has seen a decline of 2.45%. This downward trend observed across 27 unique platforms, accumulating in the reduction of 340,000 ETH, valued at approximately $1.18 billion. So here they were talking about Lido pretty much, and how Lido is losing a lot. So it says looking closer, Lido, the front runner among LSD protocols, so its Ether holdings decrease from 9.85 million to 9.65 million in this time frame. The movement accounts for 58.8% of the total reduction. And then they went on to say, meanwhile, Rocket Pool has maintained its position, safeguarding 1.13 million Ether without change. I think that number isn't correct. I didn't realize we had that many validators. But they seem to say that Rocket Pool has been doing okay. In fact, I think Rocket Pool has gone down by about 20,000 in total, maybe 30,000 was a discussion in trading yesterday. But because of this, let's have a look at Lido dominance. And Lido dominance has taken a hit. As of yesterday, it was at 29.78%. And let me see if I've got an updated one. Yeah, that's right. So in the last few days, it's kind of been down only. So from 30.1, basically, as the further back in time you go, the higher it was. So it's going down only pretty much. So here is like 31% and then getting into 30% and slowly going down every day until now when it's down to, 29.69%. And part of this is because people are withdrawing from Lido and putting their ETH into LRTs. So like EtherFi and Swell, Puffer and others. And the reason for that is I think Enzo as well, Enzo Finance I think it's called. Because they want to farm eigenlayer points and the airdrop tokens from those protocols. And I think that's taking a big hit on Lido and even Rocket Pool. And we keep saying that we'll see how it's going to their TVL is going to hold up after they have their airdrops. EtherFi hasn't taken too bad a hit after their first season of their token launch. But once the eigenlayer airdrops come and then the AVS's ones are done, it'll be interesting to see just how sticky some of their collateral, their TVL is. But maybe that's a bit of cope on my part. But Val actually presents a really interesting idea. He says, some of these people are earning up to 70% APR. because of the airdrops as you factor those into their rewards. And are these people going to stick around when those rewards go down to 2, 3, 4, 5%? Val doesn't think so. I don't think so, but we'll only find out in time. And then hopefully what will happen is some of that will come back to Rocket Pool, especially at a time when we're able to grow a little bit more with potential whale marriages happening after Houston, and then with NodeSet launching. That would be really exciting to see. Okay, we've got some drama from Aave and Maker that I'm just going to run through a few tweets from Mark Zeller here because he's been talking about it. So this started yesterday, and he was talking about how there's been $1 billion of DAI has been added to Maker, and that this basically, he says that this is minted out of thin air and it's run into a non-battle tested protocol. So they basically put Athena's stablecoin come into a DAI, and they were able to mint $1 billion worth of DAI because of that. And they basically, Mark here is saying that it's not battle tested, there's zero risk mitigation, the weak oracles have been in place for less than a month, and for asset hypersensible to market conditions, hypersensitive, I think he means, to market conditions. So he says, I was one of the first to support MakerDAO. The Aave protocol spent millions to support DAI via LM liquidity management, I guess, on layer 1 and 2. He says Aave was likely the main player in DAI L2 adoption. Aave supported SDAI early and gave it a boost in our merit program. And he says, I hope they will come back to their senses. So what he did was, and then he started retweeting things like Emilio here said, I feel like the next DeFi Black Swan could be a certain OG stablecoin protocol going bonkers on risk management, but I really hope I'm wrong. So then he actually wrote, Mark then wrote a governance proposal on the Aave forums, saying the proposal to remove the collateral status of DAI in Aave is now live. So they're just kicking out DAI completely. Says this will mitigate potential contagion risks for Aave users. DAI remains an onboarded asset that users are free to borrow. The end game it is. Then there's a link here, like a screenshot of the forum and a link to it as well, where you can see Mark's talk about why he's doing this. And then there was like a whole lot of discussion that kind of came up. And he says, but some people say, but you guys are onboarding SUSDE. He said, let me explain. If you put 5 centiliters of gin in your cocktail, you will have a good night and might go home with a pretty lady. If you drink 3 bottles gin, your only date will be the toilet stall. It says risk management capsizing. He's basically explaining that even though Aave are using it, they're doing it in a more reasonable manner than what Maker are doing. And then that discussion kind of went on, and it was actually like really big. And here Stani, he replied, Stani is the founder of Aave. He says, personally, I'm full favor of offboarding DAI from all Aave markets completely. At this point, I see little value for the Aave DAO with the new risk direction MakerDAO is adopting. I would suggest a temp check for full offboarding. The offboarding process should start immediately in case of favorable outcome. So it's like really strong. So then Mark here then released a tweet thread talking about like risk, when risk is now hard to predict due to reckless management and loss of all guardrails. So he was kind of presenting a case for why Aave shouldn't be using Maker anymore, so DAI. And then he says, I switched all my debt to DAI. And yeah, so this is it says, yeah. And then they got into a discussion with Hasu here, and Hasu is one of the founders of Athena. So he says that, in my opinion, the risk of Athena is greatly over-exaggerated. It's not a widowmaker trade like GBTC, BTC, let alone Lunar Terra. It's very common and relatively low risk trade many firms employ, even more so if you can use a prime broker like Copper, Fireblocks, etc. And then Mark said there's no ego. Aave is making 50 million net profit from DAI. We have all interest in MakerDAO success. That's why we hope they can snap back to reality and sound risk management, and we can restore collateral ASAP. So this discussion, of course, is still ongoing, but there was definitely a lot of drama there. Okay, so next we've got this talk about minimal viable issuance. And this is a discussion that's been going on for a few weeks. And basically a couple of Ethereum Foundation researchers came out and said that we have too much ETH staked. And there are a couple of problems with this. One is that when you have too many validators, it becomes like difficult to manage all of that, and you can have issues with like communication between them and attestations and all that kind of stuff. The other is that if there's too much ETH staked, eventually LSTs would replace ETH as the money on the protocol because so much of the ETH would be staked. And then the third thing was that with there being so much ETH staked, what's happening is that you're paying rewards for these and you're overpaying for security, basically, that there's no need to do that. There's other arguments as well, but those are some of the main ones. And a lot of people have been kind of like sharing their opinions, going back and forth, sharing their ideas. And Samus here on Barcaster and Wobcast, he shared these ideas with the ETH R&D channel, basically saying that my thoughts on issuance reduction. He says the target less than 100% ETH stake. Do you assume blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there's this thread here. I'm just like using it as an example to get the discussion started. Jasper's had quite a lot of comments about minimal viable issuance. Waldorf's had some ideas, and these guys are mostly saying that it would hurt solo staking, and that might not be the best idea. But with others, people are saying this is a good idea because we don't want that much ETH staked. Like they buy into the arguments that are involved. Anyway, Casper and Nuda came up with some ideas of potentially putting in a tokenomics change for Ethereum into the Pectra upgrade, which is targeted for the end of this year, maybe beginning of 2025. And this was hugely controversial. People saying that, you shouldn't be trying to do this. Like, this isn't a smart thing to do at this point in time, and it's just going to cause more troubles than it is going to cause solutions. But the counter argument is that if we don't do it now, or as soon as possible, basically, then a year or 2 years down the line when we can get around to it, then by then there'll already be too much ETH staked, and then you're going to actually start hurting people. Instead of new stake not coming online, you'll be forcing stake to go offline. So there's all these different arguments that I know I'm totally not doing justice to them, but one of the consequences of these talks happening is that here Ansgar says this lecture debate has been really overshadowed by the discussion around targeting, and fair enough, our mistake lecture was unlikely target to begin with. We seem to specifically disagree with targeting. Here's what are your arguments. So basically what happened is there was two arguments, like Ansgar here is saying. One is, first of all, we shouldn't be doing this, and second of all, like, we shouldn't be doing this in Pectra. So I think that what's happened here is that the core devs have now, or researchers have conceded that it shouldn't happen in Pectra, and that it might come, in the F-star update that happens after Pectra. Of course, the next one's Electra, and the one after that is F-star, whichever one they're going to choose that might be. But anyway, I thought I'd give this some coverage because it's something that's going to impact Rocket Pool down the line when this does happen. And at the moment, the way that some of the proposals stand, it might actually end up being beneficial for something like Rocket Pool as the cost of like solo stakers. But I think the idea is that you want to reduce issuance, but you also want to maximize solo staking. And I think a lot of people are pointing out that it's pretty much impossible to do that in the real world. But maybe there'll be some solutions that get thought of. Let's see. Okay, next we got a whole bunch of people excited early this morning, because there was this tweet put out by the block saying the SEC asked for public comment for Grayscale, Bitwise, and Fidelity spot ETFs. So these are the ETFs that have their final deadlines in May, and people are like, oh, this is finally a sign that the SEC is now communicating with the applicants for the ETFs, and this is going to be really great. And like, people already started joking here, like Pap says, I'm sure Eric Balkunas and Seyfarth will say the odds of approval decrease after this. But so in saying that, like, here we have James Seyfarth, and he says that apparently there's lots of people that need to hear this. Asking for public comments on the 19B4 form is standard procedure. Every single 19B4 ETF filing goes through the same process, whether approved or denied. It's not bullish in any capacity for Ethereum ETFs. That is all. So, yeah. And he says, ETH here says, when it was on Bitcoin, it was breaking news for you guys, clearly biased. And James says, so biased, the most biased. And then Ethereum Maximus says, two different questions of the subject that I can't seem to find the answer on. One, why aren't they asking public comments on the BlackRock specific ETF? And two, is it not bullish that BlackRock hasn't so far at least pulled the ETH ETF application? And number one, he says they did and they are, and you can see the comments here. And then there's a link. And then number two, he says no, that's not bullish. I guess BlackRock is just playing the waiting game. They've got no need to pull it, unless of course they think that they can go through. So here, a lot of people like Ash Crypto here was like painting this as kind of like super bullish thing, and here the block as well, quoting Paps as well. He got him in the screenshot, basically saying that this is a bullish thing. But the reality of it is that it's just procedure, and I know that this has come up a whole bunch of times before, so it's not that big a deal. We're still waiting for the SEC to tell issuers like, hey, you need to make an amendment to this form, like you need to remove staking from your application. And once we start getting that dialogue, that back and forth, then you'll know that there's something happening. Even on today's Daily Gwei, Anthony Sassano was kind of dejected a little bit. I think the bullish veneer that he's had like in the last few months has slowly been chipped away at enough that he's starting to see cracks in there now. So much so that he said it's possible that the ETF doesn't get approved in May, and this is the reason why it'll go to court and get appealed later, blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff. But for Anthony Sassano, like he's looking at the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, where he wants to see this back and forth starting before he abandons hope of the ETF getting approved. And I think it's the same for like these ETF analyst guys, because once they see some back and forth, then they'll know that it's more likely to happen. But of course, if there's no back and forth, then it's just going to be denied most likely, which is where we stand right now. So on that note, thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you're all doing well. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.